I have been driving buses for 27 years, over 2 million miles, coast to coast, border to border, through every kind of weather imaginable: blizzards in Wyoming, dust storms in Arizona, flash floods in Texas. I have seen it all, handled it all, delivered my passengers safely every single time. Until 3 nights ago. My name is Curtis Bowen. I am 53 years old, and I am sitting in a diner somewhere in Oklahoma, trying to write down what happened, because no one will believe me otherwise. The police do not believe me. The company does not believe me. My own family looks at me like I have lost my mind. But I know what happened. I know those people were real. And I need someone to understand before I disappear too. I drove into a storm on Interstate 40 with 30 passengers on board, families, businessmen, college students heading home for the holidays. 30 living, breathing human beings who trusted me to get them to their destination safely. I drove out the other side alone, not injured, not traumatized into forgetting, just alone. 30 empty seats behind me, personal belongings still in the overhead compartments, half-finished drinks still in the cup holders, as if everyone had simply ceased to exist while I was not looking. I am a careful driver, the kind who checks the weather before every route, who knows when to pull over and wait out a storm, who would never put his passengers at risk for the sake of staying on schedule. I have a perfect safety record, 27 years without a single incident. That record means nothing now. It was December 19th, 3 days before Christmas. I was driving the overnight route from Albuquerque to Oklahoma City, a trip I had made hundreds of times before. Departure at 8 in the evening, arrival around 6 in the morning. Routine. The bus was nearly full, which was normal for this time of year. Holiday travelers trying to get home, most of them settling in to sleep through the overnight drive. I did my standard greeting, went over the safety information, and pulled out of the station right on time. I remember some of the passengers. I always try to notice the people I am carrying, to see them as individuals rather than cargo. A young mother with a toddler who kept waving at me in the rearview mirror. An elderly couple celebrating their 50th anniversary, heading to spend Christmas with their grandchildren. A group of college kids sharing headphones and laughing quietly. A businessman in an expensive suit who asked me how long the trip would take and then immediately fell asleep. 30 people, 30 lives intersecting with mine for one overnight journey. The weather forecast had called for clear skies. I had checked it before leaving, as I always did. No storms, no snow, no ice. Perfect driving conditions for a December night in the high desert. But forecasts can be wrong. And this one was wrong in ways I still cannot explain. Around midnight, about 3 hours into the trip, I saw clouds building on the horizon. Dark, heavy clouds that seemed to swallow the stars as they spread across the sky. Lightning flickered in the distance, and the wind began to pick up, buffeting the bus with gusts that made the steering wheel fight against my hands. I considered pulling over, should have pulled over, but the next rest stop was only 30 miles ahead, and the storm looked like it was still far away. That was my mistake. The storm was not far away. The storm was waiting for us. It happened faster than any weather system I had ever encountered. One moment the road ahead was clear. lit by my headlights and the occasional flash of distant lightning. The next moment, I was driving blind. The rain came first, so heavy that my wipers could not keep up, so thick that my headlights reflected back at me like solid walls of white. Then came the wind, shrieking around the bus, pushing it sideways, making the whole vehicle shudder and groan. I slowed down to a crawl. I could barely see the road in front of me, could barely keep the bus moving in a straight line. I knew I needed to stop, to pull over and wait it out, but there was nowhere safe to stop. The shoulder had disappeared into the darkness, swallowed by the storm. I glanced in the rearview mirror to check on my passengers. Most of them had woken up, their faces pale and frightened in the dim interior lights. The young mother was holding her toddler close. The elderly couple was gripping each other's hands. The college kids had stopped laughing. I told them everything would be okay. Told them I had driven through worse. Told them to stay calm and stay seated. I was lying. I had never driven through anything like this. The lightning was wrong. Not the usual white or purple flashes, but something darker, something that seemed to leave shadows where there should have been light. Each strike illuminated the clouds from within, and what I saw in those brief moments made my heart race. The clouds were moving wrong, swirling in patterns that did not match any storm I had ever witnessed. Not rotating like a tornado, but churning, writhing, as if something massive was moving inside them. The thunder was not rolling or rumbling. It was pulsing, a rhythmic bass note that seemed to vibrate through the floor of the bus, through my bones, through everything. And there was something else. Something in the storm that I could not identify. A presence, a pressure, a sense that we were not alone in the darkness. That something was out there, moving alongside us, watching. I pushed the thought away, focused on the road, kept driving. The storm would end eventually. Storms always ended. I just had to keep moving until we reached the other side. I did not know that the other side would be empty. The first disappearance happened about 20 minutes into the storm, during a lull in the wind and rain. The weather had not stopped, but it had eased enough that I could see the road again, could relax my grip on the steering wheel slightly. I heard a sound from behind me, a soft gasp, barely audible over the rain. I glanced in the rearview mirror. The elderly woman, the one celebrating her 50th anniversary, was staring at the empty seat beside her. Her husband was gone. I called back, asked if everything was okay. The woman did not respond. She just kept staring at the empty seat, her face frozen in an expression of confusion and dawning horror. I told myself the man must have gone to the restroom. The bus had a small lavatory in the back. That had to be it. The man had gotten up while I was focused on the road, gone to use the facilities, and his wife had simply not noticed. But the woman started screaming, a raw animal sound that cut through the noise of the storm. She was pointing at her husband's seat, at the impression still visible in the cushion, at the half-eaten sandwich still sitting on the tray table. He had not gone to the restroom. He had not walked anywhere. He had simply vanished, leaving everything behind except his body. I pulled the bus over. I did not care about the storm anymore, did not care about the schedule. Something was wrong, terribly wrong, and I needed to figure out what. I walked back through the bus, checking the lavatory, checking under seats, checking everywhere a grown man could possibly hide. I found nothing. The woman's husband was gone. The other passengers were awake now, watching, whispering. I could see the fear in their eyes, the same fear I was feeling. This was not possible. People did not just disappear, but the empty seat said otherwise. The grieving widow said otherwise. I returned to the driver's seat. I did not know what else to do. I could not explain what had happened. I could only keep driving, keep moving, and hope that somehow everything would make sense when we reached our destination. I put the bus in gear and pulled back onto the highway. Behind me, the storm closed in again. The disappearances came faster after that. One after another, as if whatever was taking my passengers had grown bolder, more hungry. The businessman vanished while I was watching the road. One moment visible in the rearview mirror, the next moment gone, his expensive briefcase still sitting on the seat beside him. Two of the college kids disappeared at the same time, their friends screaming, reaching for empty air where their companions had been seconds before. The young mother vanished, and then her toddler vanished, and I nearly crashed the bus because I was looking in the mirror instead of at the road, trying to understand how a child could simply cease to exist. The storm raged around us, impossibly long, impossibly intense. We should have driven through it by now. We should have reached clear skies, civilization, safety. But the storm went on, and the passengers kept disappearing. And I was starting to wonder if we were driving through weather at all. I tried using my radio, static. Tried my cell phone, no signal. Tried the emergency communication system built into the bus, dead like everything else. We were alone in the storm, cut off from the world, and something was hunting us. I counted the remaining passengers in the mirror. 15 left, then 12, then 8. Each time I looked, there were fewer faces staring back at me, fewer survivors huddled together in the back of the bus. They had stopped screaming, stopped crying. They just sat in silence, waiting for their turn, knowing there was nothing they could do to stop it. One woman, a middle-aged traveler whose name I had never learned, made her way to the front of the bus. She sat in the seat directly behind me, the one reserved for passengers who need assistance. She asked me what was happening. Her voice was calm, too calm. The voice of someone who had already accepted that she was going to die. I told her I did not know. Told her I was sorry. Told her I was doing everything I could to get us out of this. She nodded, said she believed me, said she could tell I was a good man who had just driven into something terrible by accident. Then she asked me to tell her family she loved them. She gave me names, an address, details I tried to hold onto, even as the storm howled around us. The next time I looked in the mirror, she was gone. The last few passengers went quickly, one after another, until the bus was empty except for me. The college student who had been crying in the back row, gone. The truck driver on his way to a new job, gone. The teenage girl traveling alone, who had told me she was running away from a bad situation at home, gone. 30 passengers, 30 human beings with lives and families and futures. All of them vanished, taken by something in the storm, leaving nothing behind but their belongings and the memory of their faces. I drove in silence. The only sounds were the rain hammering the roof, the wind screaming around the bus, and the rhythmic pulse of that strange thunder that had been present since the beginning. I should have stopped, should have broken down, given up, accepted that whatever had taken my passengers would take me too. But something kept me going, some instinct, some stubbornness, some refusal to surrender to whatever was out there in the darkness. I kept my eyes on the road, did not look in the mirror anymore, did not want to see the empty seats, the abandoned belongings, the evidence of 30 lives that had ended on my watch. The storm began to weaken, slowly at first, then more rapidly. The rain thinned, the wind died down, the lightning grew more distant, the thunder fading to a distant rumble. I saw lights ahead, street lights, building lights, the glow of civilization. I was approaching a town, emerging from the storm into the normal world. I drove through the edge of the weather system and into clear skies. The stars were visible again, cold and distant, indifferent to what had happened beneath them. I pulled into the first gas station I saw, stopped the bus, turned off the engine, and sat in the driver's seat, staring at nothing. The time on the dashboard clock said 3:15 in the morning. We had been in the storm for just over 3 hours. It had felt like forever. I opened the door and stepped outside. The air was cold and clean, free of rain, free of wind. A normal December night in Oklahoma. I walked around to the side of the bus and opened the luggage compartments. The bags were still there. 30 passengers worth of luggage waiting for owners who would never claim them. I went back inside the gas station and called 911. I told the police everything. The storm, the disappearances, the way my passengers had simply vanished one by one while I drove blind through the rain. I knew how it sounded. I knew they would not believe me. They did not. The officers exchanged glances, asked me if I had been drinking, asked me if I had taken any substances, asked me, gently but firmly, if I had perhaps done something to my passengers and was now trying to cover it up. I understood their suspicion. I would have been suspicious too. A bus driver shows up with 30 missing passengers and a wild story about a supernatural storm. It sounded like the confession of a madman or the alibi of a murderer. They searched the bus, found the luggage, the personal belongings, the half-eaten snacks, and abandoned phones. Found no blood, no signs of struggle, no evidence that anything violent had occurred. They searched the route, sent officers to drive the same stretch of Interstate 40, looking for bodies, wreckage, anything that might explain what had happened. They found nothing. The road was clear, the desert was empty, and the storm had moved on without leaving a trace. They checked my background, my employment history, my driving record, my personal life. They found nothing suspicious. 27 years of perfect service, no criminal record, no history of violence or mental illness. They were left with an impossible situation. 30 people had boarded a bus in Albuquerque. None of them had arrived in Oklahoma City. The only witness was the driver, whose story made no sense, but whose demeanor showed no signs of deception. I was held for questioning for 2 days. I told the same story over and over, answered the same questions, submitted to the same tests. The investigators grew frustrated, then resigned, then sympathetic. In the end, they had to let me go. There was no evidence of a crime. There was no evidence of anything except 30 missing people and a bus driver who could not explain what had happened to them. The worst part was not the investigation, not the suspicion, not the endless questions from people who did not believe me. The worst part was the families. They started contacting me within days. Phone calls, emails, letters. 30 families, desperate for answers, turning to the only person who had been there when their loved ones disappeared. I talked to as many of them as I could. The elderly woman whose husband had vanished first, the parents of the young mother and her toddler, the roommates of the college students who had been heading home for Christmas. I told them what I had seen, told them about the storm, the disappearances, the way their loved ones had been there one moment and gone the next. I told them I was sorry, so sorry, that I had not been able to stop it. Some of them blamed me, called me a liar, a murderer, a monster. I understood. I would have blamed myself too, in their position. Others believed me. Something in my voice, in my eyes, convinced them that I was telling the truth, that I had witnessed something terrible and inexplicable, and that their loved ones were gone in a way that no one could have prevented. One woman, the sister of the middle-aged traveler who had sat behind me in her final moments, asked me to repeat the message, the names, the address, the words her sister had wanted her family to hear. I told her everything I remembered. The woman listened in silence, then thanked me, then hung up. I never heard from her again. The families faded from my life, one by one, returning to their grief, their unanswered questions, their desperate hope that someday the truth would emerge. I could not give them that truth. I did not have it myself. 2 weeks after the incident, I put on my uniform and climbed behind the wheel of another bus. People thought I was crazy. My family begged me to quit, to find another job, to never set foot on a bus again. My supervisor offered me desk work, administrative duties, anything that would keep me off the road. I refused. I needed to drive, needed to prove to myself that what had happened was an aberration, a one-time nightmare that would never repeat. Or maybe I needed to find that storm again, to drive into it deliberately, to find my passengers, to understand what had taken them. I have not found it. 6 months of driving, thousands of miles, and I have not encountered anything like that night on Interstate 40. The storms I drive through are normal storms. The passengers I carry arrive at their destinations safely. But I watch the weather differently now, study the forecasts, looking for systems that do not quite fit the patterns. Drive a little slower when the clouds gather. Keep one eye on the mirror at all times, counting my passengers, making sure they are still there. Sometimes, late at night, when the road is empty and the darkness presses against the windows, I feel it. A presence, a pressure, a sense that something is watching me from just beyond the range of my headlights. I know the storm is still out there. Know it is waiting for another bus, another driver, another group of passengers who have no idea what they are driving into. I have tried to warn people, written letters to the weather service, contacted meteorologists, researchers, anyone who might listen. No one believes me. No one wants to believe that something could exist in a storm, something that hunts, something that takes people and leaves no trace. But it exists. I know it exists. I saw it take 30 people, one by one, while I drove blind through the rain. And someday, I know, it will find me again. I'm sitting in a diner now, writing this account, watching the sky outside the window. A storm is building in the distance, dark clouds gathering on the horizon, lightning flickering in the depths. It looks like a normal storm. It probably is a normal storm, but I cannot help watching it, cannot help wondering if this is the one, if tonight is the night the storm comes back for me. I have made peace with that possibility. If it takes me, at least I will know what happened to my passengers. At least I will finally have answers, even if those answers come at the cost of my life. But I do not want anyone else to go through what I went through. Do not want another driver to find themselves alone in an empty bus, surrounded by the belongings of people who no longer exist. That is why I am writing this. Not for sympathy, not for understanding, not for anyone to believe me, just to warn people, to tell them that some storms are not what they appear to be, that sometimes the weather is a mask for something else, something hungry, something patient. I have driven through thousands of storms in my career. Most of them are just water and wind, inconvenient but harmless. But some of them are different. Some of them have something inside them, something waiting for the right moment, the right passengers, the right driver who will keep going when he should have stopped. If you are planning to travel during storm season, check the weather carefully, not just for your destination, but for every mile of the route. If a storm appears from nowhere, if the forecasts do not match what you are seeing, if something feels wrong, do not keep going. Stop, wait, let the storm pass without you. And if you find yourself in a storm that does not behave like a storm, if the lightning is too bright and the thunder sounds like a heartbeat, if you feel watched by something you cannot see, do not panic. Do not draw attention to yourself. Stay quiet, stay still, and hope that whatever is out there does not notice you. I do not know what took my passengers. Do not know if they are dead or somewhere else, trapped in that storm forever, endlessly circling the highways of the night. I do not know if there is any way to fight it, to escape it, to save the people it has chosen. All I know is that it is real, and it is still out there. The 30 passengers who disappeared on my bus were not the first. I have done research, careful research, looking for similar incidents. I have found them. Other buses that arrived empty. Other drivers with stories no one believed. Other storms that seemed to swallow people whole. This has been happening for a long time, and it will keep happening until someone figures out what is in those storms and how to stop it. I do not expect to be that person. I'm just a bus driver, just a witness, just the unlucky man who drove into something he did not understand. But maybe someone who reads this will be smarter than me, braver than me. Maybe someone will find the answers I could not. Until then, I will keep driving, keep watching, keep counting my passengers, and keep hoping the storm does not come back. The case remains open. 30 people officially missing. 30 families still waiting for answers. 30 empty seats that I see every time I close my eyes. I was responsible for them. They trusted me to get them home safely, and I failed. I do not know how I could have done anything differently, but that does not ease the guilt. That does not stop me from seeing their faces in the mirror, even when the seats behind me are empty. If you are ever on a bus, a train, a plane, any form of transportation that takes you through a storm, pay attention. Watch the other passengers. Count them. Keep counting them. And if the numbers start to change, if people start disappearing, if the storm seems to last longer than it should, know that you are in danger. Know that something has found you. Pray that you are not the last one left, because being the last one left is not survival. It is a different kind of death, the kind where your body keeps going, but something inside you has been taken, just like the passengers you could not save. I drove into the storm with 30 people who trusted me. I drove out alone, and I have been alone ever since.